So in my video, 4 ways that entities attack, a lot of people have come at me in the comments because of what I say about how entities and attachments are like the insects, rodents, criminals, and homeless of the energetic world. And the reason they were coming at me in the comments, I can only guess, is because they believe that I am equating homeless to parasites and criminals. And I'm not. And the reason I group them together is you will often find them grouped together in the energy system. And I'm going to explain why that is and how that happens. And I'm trying to dispel fear, for one, by saying they're like insects, attachments are. And two, hopefully inspire some sensitivity to earthbound spirits if they're really just the homeless of the energy world. But I realized, oh, most people think that spiritual attachments are always parasitic. They're not always parasitic. They're not always parasitic. And in the earthbound spirits are just as much a victim to entities as we are. So I'm going to break it all down. I'm going to explain it in more detail because if the body is the temple, if the body is a home for our spirits to live in, and if a person dies and they don't cross over, go to their new home, then they're left here and they're earthbound. They are essentially homeless and they're victims. They're victims of circumstance. And true, many earthbounds can elect to stay if they choose, but many of them become victims of their circumstance in the sense that they don't have mobility. They're limited to where their frequency is or where their frequency can attach. It doesn't necessarily make them a parasitic being. Their main goal isn't to feed off of your energy. They just end up where they end up. It'll make more sense here in a minute. The majority of the population aren't occupying all of our chakras. And what happens when you have a vacancy? We've talked about this before, right? With the etheric disconnect. But it's like, imagine if you have a house. And this is a really good analogy, a really good metaphor, because it's going to bring it all together and it's going to explain how they end up in the energy system and how they end up in the energy system all together. But we need a metaphor. So in this case, if your house is your energy system, your house is your temple, here's your body. Well, you have one room that you really don't go into. You have memory boxes from childhood that remind you of your traumatic childhood. At any rate, or you just don't go in that room. And let's say you have an armoire in that room that you got from an antique store. And you never go in the room. You shut the door. You never go in the room. What's going to happen? Well, if a storm happens and breaks the window, or if the window just breaks, you're not going to notice. And what's that going to be equivalent to? Aura damage, damage to the aura, a broken window. And what happens when there's a broken window to a house? Well, insects are going to come in. Even if there isn't a broken window, insects are going to go in. You're not occupying that space. You're not noticing them in there. And it doesn't make the insects bad. Insects are just doing what they're doing. They're living where they're living, right? They're just existing. And so insects come in. They're going to fly in the window. Windows open are no longer there. They fly in. They're coming into this room. And that would be the same as aura damage to the energy system. That's elemental attachments just kind of finding their way into the chakra. Finding their way into the chakra happens. And I had one person in the comments say, you really don't have to explain yourself, because I was trying to explain myself. And I'm like, I shouldn't, but it does bring into my mind the awareness of this is a really great opportunity for me to explain this in more depth to where it can fully land, where you can totally understand and relate to how these things operate. So if there is an earthbound spirit that was connected to the armoire that was purchased from an antique store, because their DNA has a lot of their energy, they're here, they have no body, so they're actually just tugged around by whatever has most of their DNA. a frequency match. So there's an earthbound stuck to the armoire. So now we got an earthbound spirit in this room you never go into, and insects because of the broken window. Doesn't make the earthbound bad. Doesn't make the earthbound bad. And it doesn't make the earthbound a parasite, an energetic parasite either. The earthbound is just a victim of circumstance. Like many homeless people are victims of circumstance. I mean, yeah, some homeless people elect to be homeless. I've been homeless a couple of times. I was in an abusive relationship where I left and I didn't have the resources to get a home, but I chose to leave anyway. But I was also homeless when I was a teenager when my mom left my dad and she was a drug addict. She couldn't provide for us or keep a roof over our heads. We lived in the car. So I have experienced the whole gamut and the whole spectrum. In no way coming from this like snooty, judgmental place towards homeless or criminals or even insects. I'm telling you what I see in energy and how they group together and why. So we've got this room, this chakra that's unoccupied, and we have these, and there's an earthbound in it, and there's insects in it, or right, or a homeless person in it. What are criminals looking for? Criminals are the entities. Now they are the bad guys. They are the parasites. And what are they looking for? What are they always looking for? Any criminal, whether it's a physical criminal or an energetic criminal. What are they looking for? They're looking for easy targets. Easy targets. And the insects and earthbounds existing in this space are going to signal, they're going to signal to invasive energies, entities, space available here. Because there's going to be low frequency from the earthbound, because the earthbound is going to be in its pain loop from all of that emotional energy trauma that it's collected that didn't resolve. And it's like probably contributing to why it's earthbound in the first place. And so that's a frequency. And attached to the armoire in your house, well, your chakra, you've got aura damage. Got it. Okay. So the entity moves in, and what ends up happening is the earthbound spirit is actually just as much a victim to the entity as the person's where it's attaching to as well. That's why they all end up grouped together in the energy system. Because if there's damage to the aura and there's an unoccupied space in your chakra due to childhood trauma or anything at all, then of course there's going to be elemental attachments. And of course there's going to be a possibility or a opportunity for earthbound spirits. And also, invasive energies are going to want to move in too. And that's how they all end up together in the energy system, and why they all end up together in the energy system, and why it's so common to find all three of them grouped together in that one unoccupied chakra. I want to mention invasive doesn't necessarily mean bad, right? It just means you've introduced something to an ecosystem where it doesn't belong, to the detriment of the ecosystem that it's in. And it can often be in detriment to itself as well, because it's not its native system. So it's not really helping it either. But they are accessing your resources. They are accessing your resources because the chakras powering your life force energy, your vitality for whatever component of your life that chakra powers. And if it's your root chakra, that's going to be your health, your money, your stability, your family relationships, your security, your sense of safety. If it's your sacral, if this is happening in your sacral, that's going to affect your confidence, your image, your creative energy, your manifesting power, your access to your manifesting powers and abilities. If it's in your solar plexus, that's going to affect your vitality, your willpower, your sense of psychic boundaries and strength. In your heart chakra, it'll affect your ability to feel that love from the people around you, the love for you and from your environment, that love that's out there for you. It's even self-love. If it's in your throat chakra, if this is occurring in your throat chakra, it's going to affect your voice, your expression, your truth. If it's in your third eye chakra, it's going to affect your memory, your ability to conceptualize, visualize. And if it's in your crown chakra, it's going to affect your ability to discern and your cognizance, your mental acuity. All of that, any energy, all that energy for all your chakras, for all these components of your life, if you're not fully occupying that chakra and you're not fully utilizing the energy from that chakra and all this stuff moves in, it's going to just utilize it for its own purposes. And entities will hold earthbounds hostage because the entity can benefit and feed not just on the energy from that chakra that you're not utilizing, but also from the pain loop energy that the earthbound is in when they died. And that's how earthbounds end up getting held hostage by entities.